Angry customer makes waitress cry. Messi turns her day around. How will this story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The bustling sounds of a small diner filled the air as Elena, a hard-working waitress, navigated through the crowded tables with practiced ease. Her smile never wavered, even as the demands of her job weighed heavily on her shoulders. She had been working at the diner for years, pouring her heart and soul into every shift, hoping to make enough money to support her sick mother. Despite the long hours and meager pay, Elena never complained. She knew that every penny she earned brought her one step closer to providing her mother with the care she desperately needed. So, she pushed through the exhaustion, the aching feet, and the endless stream of customers, determined to make the most of every day. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the diner's windows, Elena felt a sense of relief wash over her. The dinner rush was coming to an end, and she could finally catch her breath. She wiped her brow with the back of her hand and surveyed the room, ensuring that all her customers were satisfied. Little did she know that her life was about to change forever, all thanks to a chance encounter with a quiet customer who had been watching her every move. The diner's door swung open, and a well-dressed man strode in, his face etched with a scowl. He exuded an air of arrogance and impatience, as if the world itself should bend to his will. Elena's heart sank as she realized that he would be seated in her section. With a deep breath and a forced smile, she approached the man, her notepad at the ready. "Good evening, sir," she greeted him, her voice warm and welcoming. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" The man barely glanced at her, his eyes fixed on the menu. "I'll have a coffee," he snapped, his tone dripping with disdain. "And make sure it's hot this time. The last place I went to served me lukewarm swill." Elena nodded, jotting down his order. "Of course, sir. I'll bring that right out for you." As she turned to walk away, the man's voice stopped her in her tracks. "And I'll have the steak, medium rare. If it's overcooked, I'll send it back." Elena's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Absolutely, sir. I'll make sure the kitchen gets it just right." She hurried away, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the man's eyes boring into her back, and she knew that he would be watching her every move, waiting for her to make a mistake. As Elena placed the man's order with the kitchen, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her. She had dealt with difficult customers before, but something about this man set her on edge. His demeanor was cold and unforgiving, and she knew that he would not hesitate to berate her if anything went wrong. She busied herself with her other tables, refilling drinks and checking on her customers, all while keeping a watchful eye on the kitchen. When the man's steak was ready, she carefully carried it out to him, setting it down with a flourish. "Here you are, sir," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "One medium rare steak. Is there anything else I can get for you?" The man cut into the steak, his face twisted into a scowl. "This is overcooked," he snapped, pushing the plate away. "I told you medium rare, not medium. Are you deaf or just incompetent?" Elena's face flushed with embarrassment as the other diners turned to stare. She could feel their eyes on her, judging her, pitying her. "I'm so sorry, sir," she stammered, reaching for the plate. "I'll have the kitchen remake it right away." But the man wasn't finished. "I don't want a remake," he snarled, his voice rising with each word. "I want a competent waitress who can get my order right the first time. Is that too much to ask?" Elena's eyes filled with tears as she stood there, frozen in place. She wanted to defend herself, to tell the man that she was doing her best, but the words wouldn't come. She could only stand there, humiliated and overwhelmed, as the man continued to berate her in front of the entire restaurant. Unbeknownst to Elena, a quiet customer had been watching the entire exchange from a corner booth. He had noticed her the moment he walked in, struck by her kind smile and gentle demeanor. He had watched as she moved from table to table, never losing her patience or her grace, even as the demands of her job grew more and more challenging. As the arrogant man's insults grew louder and more vicious, the quiet customer felt a surge of anger rise within him. He had seen too many people like this in his life, people who thought they could treat others like dirt just because they had money or power. It was a mentality that he despised, and he knew that he couldn't sit by and watch it happen any longer. With a deep breath, the customer rose from his seat and made his way over to Elena's side. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, causing her to look up at him in surprise. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice calm and even. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. I think there's been a misunderstanding." The arrogant man's face turned red with anger. "A misunderstanding?" he sputtered. "The only misunderstanding here is that this waitress doesn't know how to do her job." The quiet customer shook his head. "I've been watching her all evening," he said, his eyes locked on the man's. "She's been working tirelessly to ensure that every customer in this diner is satisfied. She's kind, patient, and hardworking, and she doesn't deserve to be spoken to like this." Elena's eyes widened in shock as she realized who the quiet customer was. Standing before her, defending her honor, was none other than Lionel Messi, one of the greatest football players of all time. The arrogant man's jaw dropped as he realized who he was speaking to. He had been so focused on his own anger and frustration that he hadn't even noticed the football legend sitting just a few feet away. "Lionel Messi," he stammered, his voice suddenly small and uncertain. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize." But Messi wasn't interested in his apologies. He turned to Elena, his eyes full of kindness and understanding. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, his hand still resting on her shoulder. Elena nodded, wiping away a stray tear. "I'm fine," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Thank you for standing up for me." Messi smiled, his face lighting up with warmth and compassion. "No one deserves to be treated like that," he said firmly. "You're doing an amazing job, and I want you to know that." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few bills, pressing them into Elena's hand. "This is for you," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I know it's not much, but I hope it helps." Elena looked down at the bills in her hand, her eyes widening in shock. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life, more than enough to cover her mother's medical bills for months. She looked back up at Messi, her eyes filling with tears of gratitude. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you so much." Messi just smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You deserve it," he said simply. "Keep doing what you're doing, and never let anyone tell you that you're not good enough." As Messi turned to leave, the entire diner erupted in applause. The customers had been watching the exchange with bated breath, amazed at the football star's kindness and generosity. They had seen the way he had stood up for Elena, the way he had treated her with respect and compassion, and they knew that they had witnessed something truly special. The arrogant man, on the other hand, slunk out of the diner in shame, his head hung low. He had been put in his place by a true hero, and he knew that he would never forget the lesson he had learned that day. Elena, for her part, could hardly believe what had just happened. She had started the day feeling hopeless and overwhelmed, convinced that she would never be able to make ends meet. But now, thanks to the kindness of a stranger, she had a renewed sense of hope and purpose. She looked down at the bills in her hand, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She knew that the money would make a huge difference in her life, but it was the message behind it that truly mattered. Messi had shown her that she was valued, that she was worthy of respect and kindness, and that was a gift that she would cherish forever. In the days and weeks that followed, Elena's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The money that Messi had given her allowed her to pay off her mother's medical bills and even put a little aside for emergencies. But it was the impact of his kindness that truly transformed her. She began to hold her head a little higher at work, no longer letting the demands of her job weigh her down. She started to see herself through Messi's eyes, as someone who was deserving of respect and compassion, and that newfound confidence radiated out to everyone around her. Her customers began to notice the change in her demeanor, and soon, the diner was buzzing with stories of the kind-hearted waitress who had captured the attention of a football legend. People came from far and wide just to meet her, to thank her for her hard work and dedication, and to share in the joy of her newfound success. Even Elena's boss, a gruff man who had always been quick to criticize, began to see her in a new light. He started to appreciate her work ethic and her positive attitude, and he even gave her a raise, something he had never done before. Through it all, Elena never forgot the man who had made it all possible. She kept a small photo of Messi in her apron pocket, a reminder of the kindness and generosity that had changed her life forever. And whenever she felt down or discouraged, she would take it out and look at it, remembering the words he had spoken to her that fateful day. As the months passed, Elena's life continued to improve in ways she had never dreamed possible. With the extra money she was earning at the diner, she was able to move her mother into a better apartment, one with plenty of sunlight and a view of the city. She even started taking classes at the local community college, determined to build a better future for herself and her family. But even as her life changed for the better, Elena never forgot the lessons she had learned from Messi. She made it her mission to spread kindness and compassion wherever she went, to treat everyone she met with the same respect and dignity that he had shown her. She started volunteering at a local homeless shelter, serving meals and offering words of encouragement to those who had lost everything. She became a mentor to younger waitresses at the diner, teaching them the value of hard work and perseverance, and always reminding them that they were worthy of respect and kindness. And through it all, she held on to the hope and the belief that Messi had given her, the conviction that no matter how hard life got, there was always a reason to keep going, to keep fighting for a better tomorrow. Years passed, and Elena's life continued to flourish. She graduated from college with honors, earning a degree in social work, and started a job at a local nonprofit organization that helped struggling families get back on their feet. She even met a kind and caring man who loved her for all that she was, and together, they built a life filled with joy and purpose. But even as she moved forward, Elena never forgot the man who had set her on this path. She often thought of Messi, wondering what had become of him, and hoping that he knew just how much his kindness had meant to her. One day, as she was walking home from work, she spotted a familiar face on a billboard advertising a charity event. It was Messi, his kind eyes and warm smile just as she remembered them. The event was a fundraiser for a children's hospital, and Elena knew in that moment that she had to attend. She saved up her money and bought a ticket, her heart racing with excitement and nerves as she arrived at the event. The room was filled with people, all dressed in their finest clothes and chatting animatedly with each other. But Elena only had eyes for one person. As she made her way through the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest, she caught a glimpse of Messi standing by the stage, surrounded by a group of admirers. She took a deep breath and walked up to him, her hands shaking slightly as she tapped him on the shoulder. Messi turned around, his eyes widening in surprise as he recognized the woman standing before him. It had been years since that fateful day in the diner, but he had never forgotten the hard-working waitress with the kind smile and the gentle heart. "Elena," he said, his voice filled with warmth and recognition. "Is that really you?" Elena nodded, tears filling her eyes as she looked up at the man who had changed her life. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "for everything you did for me that day. You have no idea how much it meant to me." Messi smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I'm so glad to hear that," he said. "I always wondered what happened to you, and I'm so happy to see that you're doing well." Elena took a deep breath, trying to find the words to express the depth of her gratitude. "You gave me hope," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "You showed me that there was still goodness and kindness in the world, even when everything seemed so dark. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for you." Messi reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "You did that all on your own, Elena," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "You had the strength and the courage inside you all along. I just helped you see it." As Elena and Messi talked, the rest of the room seemed to fade away. They spoke of their lives and their dreams, of the challenges they had faced and the victories they had won. And as they talked, Elena realized that Messi was just as kind and humble as she had always remembered him to be. He spoke of his own struggles, of the times when he had felt lost and alone, and of the people who had helped him find his way. He talked about the importance of giving back, of using his platform and his influence to make a difference in the world. And as Elena listened, she felt a sense of kinship with the man who had once seemed so far above her. She realized that they were not so different after all, that they both had the same hopes and fears and dreams. As the evening drew to a close, Messi took Elena's hand once more, his eyes filled with warmth and sincerity. "Promise me something, Elena," he said, his voice low and earnest. "Promise me that you'll never stop fighting for what you believe in, that you'll never stop spreading kindness and compassion wherever you go." Elena nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. "I promise," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "I'll never forget what you did for me, and I'll never stop trying to make the world a better place." Messi smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "I know you will," he said. "You have a special light inside you, Elena. Never let anyone dim that light." As Elena left the charity event that night, she felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. She had been given a second chance at life, a chance to make a difference in the world, and she knew that she could not waste it. She threw herself into her work at the nonprofit, pouring her heart and soul into every case, every family that she helped. She became known as the woman who never gave up, who always found a way to make the impossible possible. And as she worked, she never forgot the lessons that Messi had taught her. She treated everyone she met with kindness and respect, no matter who they were or where they came from. She stood up for the voiceless and the marginalized, fighting for justice and equality in all its forms. Years passed, and Elena's reputation grew. She became a leader in her field, a voice for change and progress, and a beacon of hope for all those who had lost their way. And through it all, she held onto the memory of that fateful day in the diner, the day that had set her on the path to a better life. She knew that she owed everything to Messi, to the man who had shown her the power of kindness and compassion. And she knew that she would spend the rest of her days trying to live up to his example, to be the kind of person who made the world a little bit brighter, a little bit better, with every act of love and generosity. One day, as Elena was working in her office, she received a phone call that would change her life once more. It was from a representative of Messi's charitable foundation, inviting her to speak at a conference on social justice and equality. Elena was stunned. She had never imagined that her work would garner such attention, that she would be asked to share her story with the world. But as she thought about it, she realized that this was the perfect opportunity to honor Messi's legacy, to inspire others to follow in his footsteps. She accepted the invitation with a grateful heart and began to prepare her speech. She pored over her notes and her memories, trying to find the right words to express the depth of her gratitude and the magnitude of Messi's impact on her life. When the day of the conference arrived, Elena was nervous but determined. She stood before the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest, and began to speak. She told them about her life before that fateful day in the diner, about the struggles and the hardships that she had faced. She spoke of the kindness and generosity that Messi had shown her, and of the way that his actions had changed the course of her life. But most of all, she spoke of the power of compassion, of the way that a single act of kindness could ripple out and touch countless lives. She urged her listeners to follow Messi's example, to be the light in someone else's darkness, to never stop fighting for what was right and good in the world. As she spoke, Elena could feel the energy in the room shifting, the hearts and minds of her audience opening up to her message. And when she finished, the applause that erupted was deafening, a testament to the power of her words and the strength of her conviction. In the years that followed, Elena's life continued to be a testament to the power of kindness and compassion. She became a leading voice in the fight for social justice, speaking out against inequality and discrimination wherever she saw it. She founded her own nonprofit organization, dedicated to helping those who had been left behind by society, and worked tirelessly to make the world a better place. But through it all, she never forgot the man who had set her on this path. She kept a small photo of Messi in her office, a reminder of the kindness and generosity that had changed her life forever. And whenever she felt discouraged or overwhelmed, she would take it out and look at it, remembering the words he had spoken to her all those years ago. "You have a special light inside you, Elena. Never let anyone dim that light." Those words had become her mantra, her guiding principle in life. And as she looked back on all that she had accomplished, all the lives that she had touched and the hearts that she had changed, she knew that she had lived up to Messi's legacy. She had become a beacon of hope and compassion in a world that often seemed so dark and unforgiving. She had shown that one person, one act of kindness, could make all the difference in the world. And as she looked to the future, she knew that she would never stop fighting for what was right, never stop spreading the light of love and compassion wherever she went. Because that was the true power of kindness, the true legacy of the man who had changed her life. Lionel Messi, the hero who had shown her the way, the friend who had believed in her when no one else would. He had given her a second chance at life, a chance to make a difference in the world. And she would spend the rest of her days honoring that gift, living up to his example, and making the world a little bit brighter, a little bit better, with every act of love and generosity. That was the power of kindness, the power of one small act to change a life forever. And it was a power that Elena would never forget, a power that she would carry with her always, in her heart and in her soul.